Okay, yo, what's up? So, this is probably the first time I share a time lapse recording of my artwork on Panochan, but uh, here we go. Okay, long story short, I do digital art for fun and post them from time to time on Panochan, which is my basically a Instagram page. Mostly focus on collage nowadays. So collage actually has many variables in styles. Like there are people do collage with physical paper cut, which is pretty cool because you can see the edge of a cut. So it has its own taste. But since I'm more familiar with Photoshop, I I'm more focusing on digital collage instead. The good thing is it allows me to push the render quality a bit further, more precise cut, more meticulous. So this piece that you're seeing has been in my mind for a while, but I didn't have to do the I didn't have the motivation to actually start on it until quite recently. So the key visual here is obviously roller coasters and a lot of it. Uh, I don't think I'm brave enough to go for a roller coaster ride in real life. I did once 10 years ago, but anyway, the the image of a roller coaster is a simulation of extreme thrill and speed from my understanding. So very wide ride, very metallic, swirling, twisting, and uh, obviously rolling. So the visual effect from this visual is quite interesting. It's like speedy curve shapes, and I see the potential of multiple roller coaster. They can intertwine and become something quite aesthetic. Okay, my first attempt with roller coaster, cutting roller coaster was actually this piece, which I post like a few years ago. And the image, this image speak for itself actually. Basically, two roller coasters making its way through a big white plastic chair. Yeah, very minimal, very simple. Okay, now we back to the main thing. So this piece, uh, as you can see, is a lot more fun to deal with because I have more things to do. Uh, More complicated because there are like nine different roller coaster in different curve paths, and they like spin together. It's like a clothes inside a washing machine. So the real challenge for me on this type of work is usually the composition because I have to figure out uh, like which ride is going to be in front, which one going to be behind, where the overlaps and underlaps to create that artificial depth, if that makes sense. And I want it to feel overwhelming and organized at the same time. So yeah, it's just a personal preference thing. So once I'm happy with the rough comp, I will move on to do the masking and the cutting of the each of the individual images. And this process took the longest for me, because based on the so on Photoshop 2024, the subject selection tool is quite good. It makes a good selection, and you only need to do some finish up, some cleanups to get to complete the cutout a lot faster. But for whatever reason, I still prefer to cut mostly from scratch by myself, so I can be able to feel the shapes better. The subject selection tool, I did use it, but for me it's only handy when I do the draft composition. So when cutting, masking, mostly I use lasso tool and pen tool. But usually when I have to zoom in so close that I can see the pixels, like on Photoshop, if you zoom close enough, you will see the pixels, like little squares thing. Then I will use a brush on a mask. For instance, like there are tiny, tiny pixelated fingers of the people that are sitting on the right. The brush is quite handy for this case, or for any similar complicated shapes. Yeah. So brush masking is quite helpful for small details like that. Because by doing this, I can also brush up the color spills on the element, because those color spills are somewhat big into the image, which I have to figure out how to remove the spills manually. Sometimes I use clone stamp to deal with the spills, so it's another tool, another valuable tool. So from these screen recordings, the this cut out process alone, I'm talking about cutting and masking only these elements. It took around 12 hours to finish. So I think it's a physical demanding task, especially for my age. I'm 30, not old, but not young either. So at the beginning, when I first started uh doing digital collage, it felt like a waste of time for a moment, if I'm being honest. But after a few years, my experience doing this get better, to the point where nowadays I can just go with the flow. Is it a flow state? I don't really know. So I do remember that during the process, the cutting process, my mind usually just shift to somewhere else most of the time. So eventually, I don't feel like a waste of time anymore. Even better, now it feels like kind of a meditation, some shot. Like you can just peacefully, slowly gliding through these things, perfecting the cuts here and there. So yeah, very fortunate that I've learned to enjoy the process and went along with the moment. So it's all good. And once I finish, like, every time I think every time I finish an artwork, this time-consuming process is actually the most enjoyable thing. Uh, which is strange, maybe, not sure. So the finished product, the result, right? Obviously, it will bring some sort of closure, sure, but the joy when creating is what I usually miss the most after I finish a piece. Okay, so after all the cutting is finished, or like finished 90%, 95%, I'll move on. Uh, so it's time to put these things together for real. I will try to figure out what's the optimal layer order to create the depths, artificial depths for the image. Then uh, I do I'll apply color balancing to make these different image feel a bit more integrated together, mostly through adjustment layers. So uh, color balancing, color grading is still quite a big thing for me. I don't know a lot. I only know the basics, and most of the time I'll just uh, play around with the matrix available in the color adjustment tools on Photoshop. And I think I slowly find my own way to control the color over time. Uh, I don't think I'm that good at color balancing. It's still quite challenging for me, but I feel like this kind of things you just have to try and experiment by yourself and see how tweaking these matrix affect the color. Uh, of course, there's a lot of YouTube tutorial about color grading, which is quite helpful if you want to deep dive on it. But yeah, mostly I will just tweak it to my old taste, and I guess it will get a bit better over time. So after I'm done with the color, to I want to create more depths for the artwork. Usually, I will just create a few empty layers and brush in some shadows, which is basically a black collage with 0% sharpness to create a misty type look. Okay. So for this artwork, it's quite tricky because I use so many different images, right? And they're all in different lighting condition, light direction. So basically quite impossible for me to create shadows that somewhat make sense with the light source. Yeah, if that makes sense. But I can still do some fake shadow to create artificial depths. Yeah. And this fake shadow can be created with some simple brush work, I think. Yeah. The purpose is to just simulate the depth. I think creating good shadow will require uh, quite a lot of study on like grayscale drawings or even physics, lights maybe. But I think I'm too lazy to learn on this shadow thing, so I will just go with some basic stuff. Like, for example, strong shadows for closer objects, and further objects will create softer shadows, and how the shadow land on an object and like somewhat show the 3D shape of the object. Well, I don't know how to describe. So shadow is quite a complicated thing. Finally, uh, before I export, usually I will try out some filters. Uh, it could be color filters or noise and see which feel better. Noise, noises and grains are quite helpful to create a certain mood for your image, especially when you want to hide the sharpness of the image. For example, if a if a photo is taken on iPhone, the image will look very sharp, very sharp. So noise and grains kind of help a bit on those case, and it also create a mood lah. But I think this is down to personal preference because there might be better ways to do all this filtering. Maybe it's better to bring the clean export over to Lightroom to do a final export from there. Yeah. So that's roughly the process of how I make this piece, how it was done. Thank you for sticking through until this point after all these random sharings, but it was fun. Let me know if you want to watch more of stuff like this. Okay, have a good day. Have fun creating. Bye bye.